Quecreek, Pennsylvania, a peaceful mining town until the earth decided otherwise. For decades, the miners here lived by one rhythm, the steady pulse of drills echoing through the hills. Coal, sweat, silence, repeat. But on one humid night in the summer of 2002, the ground made a different sound. It wasn't metal, it wasn't machinery, it was alive. A deep, rolling groan rose from the depths, as if something ancient had just woken up. Then came the water. First a trickle, then a rush, then a roar that swallowed the tunnels whole. 9 men were trapped, buried alive beneath 70 meters of rock and rising water colder than ice. No one knew what had happened. No one knew if they were still breathing. All anyone could hear was the sound below, beneath the coal. Pennsylvania, a land of rolling forests and endless veins of coal. For generations, men here were born to dig. They grew up breathing coal dust, following their fathers into what they called the Second World. Among dozens of mines scattered across the region, one name stood out: Quecreek. Rich in coal, poor in mercy. The pay was good, nearly double anywhere else. But the cost? Toxic air, crushing darkness, and the unspoken fear that the mountain above might simply collapse. By 2002, Quecreek was old, too old. 7 tunnels ran deep beneath the hills, twisting like veins of coal inside the earth. At its heart, a single phone linked the men below to the world above. A few bottles of water sat forgotten in Tunnel 5, small things that would one day decide who lived and who didn't. The mine was run by Black Wolf Mining, a company with a spotless record. But in the world of coal, just a few meters off course can turn routine into catastrophe. On the night of July 24th, 2002, deep beneath Quecreek, that line was crossed. The moment the water broke through. July 24th, 2002, a hot summer morning in Pennsylvania. At the Quecreek mine, the shift began as usual. The men entered through the main gate at the mountain's base, walking down the narrow, dim tunnel that led 70 meters below the surface. Inside, the air was thick with diesel and coal dust. Engines roared, drills screamed, and the conveyor belts rattled in a rhythm that never really stopped. Down here, every breath was earned. 18 men were working that day, split into 2 crews. Team A, 9 men, worked deep inside tunnels 4 through 7. Team B stayed closer to the entrance. The hours passed in routine exhaustion until around 8:30 that evening, when the shift was nearly done. Then a sound. Not an explosion, not even loud. Just a deep, hollow thud, like someone striking the wall of a vast, empty chamber. Crew leader Randy Fogel froze, then ran toward the sound. When his flashlight cut across the end of Tunnel 6, he stopped dead. In front of him was a gaping hole, and from that hole, water exploded outward, raging like a beast suddenly awakened. Within seconds, muddy water flooded the floor, carrying rocks, debris, and shattered equipment. Randy instantly knew what had happened. Someone had drilled into a flooded chamber. Between Tunnels 6 and 7, a miner named Mark was trapped. He clung to the wall, shouting for help, realizing too late that his drill had broken through into an abandoned mine, one that had been sealed and flooded for decades. The torrent grew louder, faster, heavier. Lights flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Randy sprinted back to Tunnel 4 and grabbed the phone. "We hit water! We're flooding! Get everyone out! Evacuate Team B! Call for rescue!" He slammed the receiver down. The sound of rushing water was now just behind him. He gathered his men. No one spoke. They followed the conveyor path, the only route to the surface, their flashlights cutting weak beams through the chaos. The tunnel sloped upward, barely 4 feet high. They crouched low, holding onto a rope Randy had tied between them. Behind them, the water followed, faster with every second. First to their ankles, then to their knees, then to their waists. Each step felt like pushing through ice and steel. After nearly 800 meters, they reached the bottom of the mine's V on the map. Just beyond that slope was the exit. But when their flashlights hit the passage ahead, it was gone. Only a black wall of water remained. The flood had consumed their last escape. The water now rose to their necks, the ceiling so low they had to tilt their heads just to breathe. There was no way out. Randy stood still for a moment. He had two choices: dive into the darkness and hope for a miracle, or go back and wait. A young miner, Harry, just 31, stepped forward. That morning he'd played with his son before work, never imagining it might be the last time. Now, his eyes burned with the need to live. He took a deep breath and dove into the black. The water was freezing, thick with mud and coal. His light vanished almost instantly. He swam blind, lungs burning, the pressure crushing. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead, and then his strength gave out. He turned back. When Harry broke the surface, gasping, his voice trembled. "It's too far. We can't make it." Randy's grip tightened on the rope. He knew the truth. They had to go back. The men fought the current in silence, clinging to jagged walls as they made their way toward where they'd started. When they finally reached the work zone, they collapsed. Cold, trembling, gasping for air. The place where their day had begun was now the only dry ground left, a small fortress surrounded by an underground sea. Some fainted from exhaustion. Others showed signs of oxygen loss, dizzy, choking, their chests tightening. Randy, still steady despite fatigue, scanned the tunnels. At the far end of Tunnel 6, he saw movement. Mark, still trapped, the water up to his chest. Without hesitation, Randy ordered a forklift from Tunnel 3. When it reached the edge, Mark leapt forward, landing hard on the machine's frame. He was pulled to safety. 9 men, together again, 9 miners, soaked, shivering, and surrounded by darkness. They sat shoulder to shoulder on the cold stone floor, listening to the sound of water crashing against the walls, and waited. The walls of despair. In the thick darkness, the sound of dripping water echoed like a ticking clock. 9 men stared at one another, faces blackened with coal dust, eyes hollow with exhaustion. No one knew if rescue was coming, but they all knew one thing: doing nothing meant dying here. Randy's voice broke the silence, hoarse, low, steady. "We're not dying here, not today." With that, a plan began to form. If they couldn't escape the flood, they would fight it. From where they stood, in Tunnel 4, they decided to build makeshift walls from whatever they could find. Rocks, planks, broken steel sheets. It sounded insane, but it was the only move left. They divided the work. Some hauled sandbags. Others pried loose stones from the walls, chipping old concrete with shovels and picks to stack into barriers. Each piece they placed wasn't just material. It was another borrowed hour of life. They built 5 walls. For a moment, the water slowed. Then it surged again. The flood from Tunnel 6 came faster than they had imagined. By the time they neared the 6th wall, cold water had already reached their feet. The faint trickle turned into a low, rumbling growl, squeezing through cracks, seeping between soaked walls. "It's no use," Randy muttered. They had to retreat, to higher ground, the upper section of Tunnel 4. By now, they had been trapped for 7 hours. The air was freezing, barely 54 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees Celsius. Their clothes hung heavy, soaked through with icy water. They pressed close together, trying to share what little warmth their bodies could offer. But the cold wasn't the only enemy. The oxygen was running out. With every passing minute, the air grew heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. Some men began to sway, dizzy from the lack of air. Others dropped to the ground, gasping, their lungs burning for oxygen. A few tried to sing, to keep their minds alive, but their voices faded, swallowed by the sound of water striking stone. In that darkness, fear became something you could almost touch. Would anyone reach them in time? Or would they vanish beneath the earth? Their names, recorded only in a report, buried under layers of rock and silence? No one answered. Only silence remained, a silence thick as water, cold as stone, and heavy as death itself. The sound from above. Time moved cruelly slow. 1 hour, 2, then 3 passed since all contact with the surface was lost. Underground, the cold seeped into their bones, and the air grew thick enough to choke on. At 5 a.m., after a sleepless night in the dark, a sound broke the silence. At first, it was faint, just a tremor in the stone, a distant vibration like thunder miles away. But to the 9 miners trembling in the dark, that sound felt like a voice calling from heaven. They looked up. No one dared to speak, they just listened. The noise grew clearer. A drill, slow, steady, relentless, like a heartbeat pulsing through the earth. In that instant, exhaustion vanished. No one felt the cold anymore. Their eyes lit up beneath the dim glow of flashlights. And then, metal pierced the ceiling above them. A gleaming steel drill bit, long and heavy, cut through the rock and broke into their world. No words were needed. One by one, they pulled hammers from their belts and struck the drill. Each blow echoed upward through 70 meters of stone. Above ground, the rescue team froze. Then someone shouted, "They're alive!" Every metallic echo was a heartbeat from below, a pulse of life breaking through the darkness. Cheers erupted across the site. Men hugged, some cried. Against all odds, they had found them. 9 men, still alive, 70 meters beneath the earth. But the fight had only begun. Hours earlier, after Randy's desperate call for help, Team B, the miners closer to the entrance, had escaped at 9:53 p.m. Once they reached the surface, they immediately alerted the company and emergency services. Within 4 hours of the initial breach, the Pennsylvania State Rescue Unit had arrived. Experts quickly pieced together what happened. An abandoned mine, the Saxman Mine, flooded and sealed for 38 years, sat directly beside Quecreek. The Saxman chambers held an estimated 340,000 cubic meters of water, enough to drown the entire Quecreek mine in a matter of hours. If the rescuers hesitated, no one below would survive. Studying the mine's slope, they realized the lowest point, the bottom of the V system, would flood first. If anyone was alive, they'd likely have retreated upward to the central section, about 70 meters deep. Using geological maps and ground radar, they worked non-stop for 3 hours, pinpointing the most probable spot above the trapped crew. 5 hours after the disaster began, a drill rig was positioned. A 16.5 centimeter bit began to cut through solid rock. That was the sound the miners had heard at dawn. 3 hours later, at 5:06 a.m., the drill finally broke through into an air pocket. And then, a sound echoed back. Not one knock, but many, fast, urgent, alive. Above ground, rescuers looked at one another. Someone laughed, someone cried. They didn't need confirmation. They had heard it themselves. There were survivors. The race against the air. The knocking proved it. They were alive. But alive didn't mean safe. Sensors showed oxygen had fallen to 12%. At that level, even breathing could kill you. Rescuers moved fast. They sealed the drill hole, connected compressors, and forced fresh air into the mine, 14 cubic meters every minute. Below, 9 men sat in the dark, lungs burning, hearts pounding. Then a faint breeze brushed their faces. Air, oxygen, life. They laughed weakly. For the first time, they could breathe again. But the relief didn't last. Hours later, the water rose to their waists, and the same drill that brought them air began to flood. On the surface, rescuers doubled the pumps, then tripled them. 3 giant machines roared through the night, sucking water from the earth. One good sign. A secondary drill reached the old Saxman mine. They started draining it to relieve the pressure. But underground, the men were cornered, forced to the highest point in Tunnel 1, the last dry space left. It was 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Their clothes clung to their skin. Each breath came slower. Each glance carried the same question: how much longer? Randy hung a tarp to block the sight of the water. "Don't look," he said quietly. "Just listen to me." They held a single rope, and the one thing connecting them to hope. Above, the mine entrance had vanished under brown water. Below, they waited in a tomb. Rescuers had one option left: dig them out. They found a massive drill in Florida, took it apart, loaded it on trucks, and drove all night to Pennsylvania. 17 hours after the accident, it arrived. 4 hours later, it began drilling, its deep metallic hum echoing across the coalfields. Underground, the men shut off their lights to save power. No one spoke. Randy walked among them, whispering, "They're drilling. They're coming. Don't give up." 27 hours passed. Then, a faint hiss of air drifted down from above. Hope flickered again. Maybe the shaft was close, but half a day later it stopped. Silence returned. One miner wrote a farewell note on a scrap of cardboard. Another prayed, and above them, the rescuers fought their own battle. At 32 meters deep, the giant drill jammed, the bit completely gone. They replaced it with one rushed in from Virginia and kept drilling. By July 26th, the ordeal had lasted 35 hours. They added a third shaft, just in case. 2 rigs now bored side by side through solid rock, while millions watched across America, hoping for a miracle. Then, it happened. The pumps caught up, the water began to fall. Randy pulled back the tarp, no more rushing flood, and there, above them, a hole, the second shaft, he whispered. 75 hours after the flood, a steel cable dropped from the ceiling. A voice came through. "This is the rescue team. How many of you are there?" 9, all alive." Cheers erupted on the surface. People hugged, cried, prayed. A narrow rescue capsule descended. Randy stepped in first. When it reached the surface, floodlights blinded him, and a wave of applause shook the night. After 77 hours underground, he was back in the light. One by one, the others followed. All 9, alive. Days later, investigators revealed the truth. The old Saxman mine had been secretly overmined in 1964, cutting too close to where Quecreek now stood. A few meters of rock, all that had separated life from disaster. A year later, at shaft number 2, a bronze statue was raised, a miner, bowing his head, lamp in hand. A monument to courage, endurance, and the night the earth nearly swallowed 9 men whole.